It's Simon and Paul, Context Channel. We want to know who has been ruling us.
Really should know who is ruling us.
Yeah, who is? Just a few days ago, the Houthis of Yemen, a very powerful rebel group, announced to have attacked a US supercarrier. They also announced they attacked a British destroyer, and before that they had announced to attack an American destroyer. There's evidence that the attacks are successful. And I would like Paul to ask to help me understand how well would our fishing vessel, which is the lead vessel of Kenya Navy, Jasiri Mombasa, how well will it have fared in such a fight?
Bro, someone is lying to Kenya.
Yeah.
Someone is lying to Kenya, and someone is just trying to make us feel good about ourselves. For a group that is brave and bold enough to hit not once, not twice,
Yeah.
a British naval vessel and American naval vessel.
Yeah.
And then someone else that is just, clearly lying to us about our might,
Yeah.
is trying to, what do we call it? When someone tries to make you part of a cabal or a group that is
Maybe
that is
to rope,
enemy.
to rope you in or something, I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is a group that is enemies with the Houthis. Then they are giving Houthis one more enemy, which is you.
To deal with.
So if Houthis can hit
Yeah.
American vessel
Yeah.
and can hit British vessels, and we know how powerful those vessels are.
They are specialized.
And
They were
then-
made specifically for the military.
And then we have our fishing boats
Yeah.
here that we think are, mighty,
Yeah.
mighty, whatever vessel. What do we call it?
It's called Jasiri Mombasa.
Jasiri Mombasa.
Yeah.
And then we think that we are big enough to be made one more enemy for the Houthis.
Yeah.
I think we are setting ourselves up for something very dangerous, and we should rethink. We should rethink.
Yeah, I'm saying this, I'm very much disturbed because the reality is Kenya, at some point we had invested a lot of money to buy good military vessels. And then through this scandal that was called Anglo leasing scandal, the Britons swindled us. The money was stolen. And then through their thievery, their very sophisticated thievery, Kenya was misled in back passing and whatever. We ended up with a refurbished Turkish fishing boat as a military vessel, brought to us at many times the initial cost, and that is the lead vessel of Kenyan Navy. And I'm saying this, just recently we have been told that the US assigned us a NATO non-ally, a non-NATO ally. So that means now they have been able to drag us into their war, in which we will join using lower grade vessel that we got through the lies of the Britons. And now I've been wondering, since even it's not the president who said that we will join that war against Houthis, it is the EU that asked Kenyan to join, that commissioned Kenyan to join. Have we shifted?
Who is ruling us?
Yeah. Have we shifted the responsibility of even calling out, of starting a war, declaring a war to some parties who through the EU or who through the US assigned that as that non-NATO member ally? Who assigned that role?
Obviously, the person that is ruling us.
Yeah,
And that
it's
is
not
obviously-
definitely not Ruto.
That is obviously not our president.
Yeah.
Someone somewhere in Washington or some
Brussels
European capital
Yeah.
is ruling us through remote control.
Yeah.
And maybe even our own president is not aware about how that is happening.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about when Houthis may decide, which they can, to launch some few ballistic missiles at our coast, which I think is within their capability. And we Kenyans are peace-loving people, want to do our trade. Or as they declared, anybody supporting Israel in its genocide against Gaza will be attacked. They started with Israel. Then the US pretended to defended Israel at all cost, went there to punish Houthis more after the devastating war the US started in Yemen in 2015. Then the Houthis have stood their ground, have been attacking the US, have sunk British bulk carriers too yet. And I see the possibility where they can swear and say, now any vessel headed to Kenyan port will be a legitimate target.
Do we have every reason to feel scared about
we have
this development?
We have every reason to feel scared.
Because we are constantly getting set up against people that have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
The first time it was our neighbors in Somalia, the Al-Shabaab, who were initially not, we were not their targets initially.
We were not their targets, and let's remember, Al-Shabaab threat terror group started while the US still occupied Somalia.
Exactly.
So they nurtured terrorists.
And then when we were made to feel, like that we were facing a real threat.
A real threat that is curated by the Americans.
And then by virtue of being immediate neighbors of Somalia, and then we got roped into the war.
Yeah.
And then that is when we started having all these terrorist attacks.
All these terrorist attacks.
And everywhere. The Garissa University were.
Yeah.
Hundreds of students got killed.
Yeah.
Just because someone made us feel that Somalia had suddenly become an enemy of Kenya.
And I want to tell you something very interesting. There's this KTN documentary called, I think, Sahel Hakukaliki.
Right.
Yeah, just Google that name, Sahel Hakukaliki. That documentary goes to the history of all terrorist groups and shows where they started. Before 1980s, there were no terrorists anywhere in the world. More or less, there weren't. Then the Soviet Afghanistan war started. Then the Americans took all Arab Islamists and trained them to fight the Soviets in Afghanistan. Then they trained those groups. They became very efficient terrorists. And then after Soviet withdrew from Afghanistan, those groups were assisted, because I cannot understand how somebody with a machine gun can cross Kenya-Uganda border. It's not easy. So I don't understand how those terrorists in Afghanistan crossed from Afghanistan through Iran or through the Indian Ocean to Middle East and headed all that way to Somalia and Sahel. So I would like to assume they were assisted by some very powerful transnational organization, which must be the US. Who else can help you cross Afghan border, Iranian border, UAE border, Saudi Arabian border, so that you now come to Yemen and then Somalia here? Who do you think can help you cross all those borders?
Maybe the same person that helped some three guys cross over to the US and bypass all the security apparatus that they have at the airports.
Exactly.
And then hit the Twin Towers in New York.
Exactly. So
to do the 9/11. I am beginning to think that 9/11 might have been self-sabotage.
Exactly. They lied to us. These people lied to us. And that documentary, if you watch it, all terrorist groups were started by the US, by the action of the US.
Is it not in public knowledge that Osama bin Laden was trained? Was America trained?
It is in the public knowledge.
And not just Osama, maybe Osama and the people that he worked with.
Exactly. And there is no evidence when he retired from America, the American service.
There's completely no evidence.
There's no evidence. So they started that terror group right here at our borders and then roped in Kenya to go invest lives there to fight a terror group that started. So I'm getting really much worried that we can be misled to join these wars by being ruled by people we don't understand, which is scary. Isn't it scary?
Let me just say that if Houthis will decide, I hope they don't.
I hope they don't.
Will decide. And again, I say I hope they don't.
Exactly. We are patriotic.
Make us their target. Then that is the time that we'll realize how powerless and how defenseless we are. And it is actually very dangerous that someone is trying to make us feel we are powerful. And that brings me to something else. We had our budget, whatever, read yesterday.
Exactly.
And then for some reason,
Yeah,
strange reason,
it's very strange.
we have had, significant increase in the allocations to all the security dockets.
Imagine
And
security.
we know that as we speak,
Yeah.
and for some time now,
Yeah.
we have not had any serious security problems,
Yeah.
threat coming from outside,
Yeah.
apart from the internal ones that I think if we had the right leadership in place,
Yeah.
and I still hope we have the right leadership in place,
Yeah.
because that is a small problem that any serious leadership would sort out in a week, and Baringo would be stable. The education in that place would not be troubled.
Yeah.
Kids will be securely in school, and people will be securely in their homes, right?
Yeah.
So apart from the issues that we have in Baringo,
Yeah.
and those places
And
where
Samburu
people and Samburu,
yeah, and
very small internal
Maragon.
problems.
Yeah.
I don't think there is any reason, and we can do that with the resources that we have, that have always been allocated to those dockets.
Yeah.
In the past, fiscal years.
Yeah.
So why have we had a sudden upshot in the allocation to the security dockets at a time when we have our 1,000 police officers being conscripted
to be sent to Haiti?
To be sent to Haiti.
I'm starting to think about it from that direction. It is very interesting. It seems the person who has been ruling us, whom we don't know yet, who got us assigned a role to fight Houthis,
Right.
who got us assigned as non-NATO ally. I think we have been roped in to invest more in some war, colonial war that is not yet disclosed, in which we will find out later, in which Kenya is supposed to even invest lives, like in Haiti, which you mentioned. Because come to think of it, I know, and we like visiting the KDF website, and you see what they pride themselves in. Not in securing Kenya, but in peacekeeping.
In peacekeeping.
In keeping peace. So peace is only peace for other countries, but not for Kenya. So, and peacekeeping is only in countries where the Anglo-Saxons, where the US and UK have interfered with.
So in making our budget, we are always thinking about Haiti, we are thinking about DRC.
Yeah, we are thinking about DRC.
We are thinking about Somalia.
With Somalia, maybe Ukraine, because you remember even they have that record that they kept peace in Bosnia.
Okay.
We had no business in Bosnia.
Should we maybe hope that the significant increase in budgetary allocation to our military, our police, and every other security organ,
other branch that, including the other one that call itself intelligent, and it is not.
Yeah. Should we hope that maybe they will, maybe this time get it right? They will decide to go get as a destroyer to replace the fishing vessel that we have in the Indian Ocean as the only serious vessel that we have for Kenya Navy.
I hope they can use their heads. I really, the role of intelligence services is to have a country get stronger and replicate itself, right?
Right.
Like if you have that branch that calls itself whichever name it likes calling itself, intelligence or not intelligent, and then you have a country whereby that service has failed to get ways of gaining, securing Kenyan freedom, of developing independent policies since independence. We cannot continue investing into an organization in which it only boasts of interoperability with MI6 and CIA. Like you have an intelligence service that is voluntarily subjugating itself to foreign colonization by the same organization that colonized and killed our people. And then maybe that silly organization that's made up of politicians, children, and other dwarfs, economic and intellectual dwarfs, driving their country further into colonization and setting up even further for failure as a country. Because I thought, intelligence is like the brain. The main role of the brain is keep us alive, even while we are sleeping, control the heart rate, so that we wake up healthy the following day. But what we have is something that is always inclined to drive Kenya further into colonization, and the kind of people that maybe spy on us when you wake up and find your phone bagged and such nonsense. But the same people cannot help your country even get freer, secure more freedom from the Britons who are murderers, you see. I hope what you said, they will be able to guide this leadership, maybe to buy serious Navy vessels, maybe frigates and destroyers.
Let us just hope that that is the only reason they have allocated more money, more resources to our military,
hope, exactly.
And not because we want to use those resources to go take part in wars that we have
do not
nothing
concern
to do
us.
with,
Exactly.
and wars that have been curated by people, you know, in Europe and the US.
Talking about security, we were told that this guy, even from FBI, which is also an internal intelligence organization, maybe equivalent to our own NIS. And think about it, we are told now that they will be helping us to conduct investigation. First, you realize that the US interest and our interest are not convergent. And think about it, we just lost CDS, CDF, Chief of Defense Forces.
Who was being flown in an
American copter.
In American copter.
Think about it. This FBI clown, do you think will lead in any serious investigation that can implicate American brand of helicopters? Do you think he can do that?
No way.
Do you think, even while investigating, will help us get to the bottom of Anglo leasing scandal in which the Britons fleeced our Kenyan companies, or fleeced even Kenyan Defense Forces, that is the Navy, in that process that ended up in us getting a refurbished fishing vessel instead of a military one?
I don't think so. I don't think anything is going to happen of that nature.
Exactly. Nothing of that sort can happen.
Do you even think that they will try to get to the bottom of the Pandora Papers?
Exactly. Yeah, they were boasting that, they will help us in fight money laundering because, quote unquote, it affects the most vulnerable of us. How far are they in investigating the Pandora Papers? Of course, that's not something they will do. They will not.
That has not even taken off.
Exactly. It's not. They won't even investigate Anglo leasing scandal. Any scandal in which the Britons and Americans, who are cousins, benefited in ripping us off, won't be investigated. And then you'll have these intelligence services of this republic that we'll have, instead of crafting and developing ways in which we can develop our own policy to benefit ourselves and keep ourselves safe from those thieves that stole us in Pandora and Anglo leasing and others. Then they are now subjugating themselves, positioning themselves well to be raped by white guys, which is very funny. I think they should be ashamed of themselves in the first place.
For the FBI boss
Yeah.
to have come to Kenya a couple of weeks after Ruto left the US,
Yeah.
I am tempted to think that this is just one of those things that are met. Like, you saw how they made it look like big for our president to have been the only person, one of the few African presidents, maybe the third, in very many years, to have been, invited by the US to, be told how important the relations between the US and Kenya is, just being the only African president. And you saw how they tried to make it look grand and exceptional.
It's so nonsensical, because if that relationship was so big, it wouldn't need to be promoted.
It wouldn't need to be promoted.
It would be palpable for every Kenyan.
It wouldn't need someone in the shape of an American ambassador to Kenya,
shuttling all media,
shuttling from one media house to another, to create a hype around it. And we should have just seen it. We are intelligent enough to see if there is anything good that is likely to come out of something. We do not need some white girl to move from one media house to another to tell us how, that trip was going to be beneficial to us. And then I wanted to say that the same thing that they tried to do, I hope they don't succeed in convincing us that all these things are meant to help us in any way. The same thing that they tried to achieve with that trip. And now with the visit of that, FBI guy, just against the backdrop of Ruto's visit to the US, things that are meant to have the feel-good effect and just make us feel because he has not gone to Uganda. We have 54 countries in Africa, and he has not gone to any other African country. He came to Kenya, and just to make us feel that we are a strategic partner of the US, and we are like this important African country, important to the US.
They are not important to ourselves.
Is it what kind of relationship is it? Is it a symbiotic relationship or some parasitic relationship?
It is parasitic relationship. Yeah, it
and,
is a slave.
And in this case,
it's a slave-master relationship, and in which the slave here must be us, our leadership, that is so much pursuing the U.S. interest at all cost. Because you never hear them mention that Kenya is a country with a population that need to be taken care of. They will only say Kenya is a geostrategic territory for the U.S. Seriously.
And so the master parasite in this case is the U.S.
Yeah, it's a parasite, and it's so sad. I just hope the extra investment in security from the budget is not for some colonial war for white Anglo-Saxons. I hope it will be spent for us to secure this country, such that we won't have, since you remember the other unfortunate scene in which Nesula Lesuda was crying on media because the banditry was so rampant. There were some people from her area that had been killed, and their bodies could not be retrieved from the bushes because of the vile bandits.
So you hope that the additional resources will help in making sure that no other person is killed and it becomes impossible for their bodies to be retrieved
from a forest in which just across there is a KDF camp.
There is a KDF
camp. So you have KDF priding itself in keeping peace elsewhere, wherever a white man is fiddling and advancing colonial interests, but cannot secure all the four walls of this country, this great country.
The joke has to stop.
Yeah, the joke has to stop. And even those who like calling themselves to be from the intelligence and whatever, prove us wrong and develop a framework in which after a decade Kenya will have an independent foreign policy securing its existence as a free country in this region, not being a sidekick of some white colonial master.
So let us not allow ourselves to be lied to be made feel that we are different from any other African country, and that our interests are different from the interests of any other African country. And we can see the game. It's as clear as day, the way that they're trying to play that game. And anyone that cooperates with them to further these gimmicks should be stopped. Should be stopped, and we should not be the ones that are getting used to further an agenda that is going to benefit
other people. Exactly. I myself, I'm also saying the same. Like, we need to be a country that works for its own interest. We are not another person's slave camp. We don't want an ancotom of a leader. Yeah, we just want an opportunity. Our president, our military, our police, and the other service working really hard to ensure that this country is strong, is independent, and is able to replicate itself in the future generations, such that we'll always have a Kenya to defend the interest of all Kenyan people into the future. Parting shot?
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So my parting shot is just let us be watch the steps of these guys closely. And let us be alert at all times. And let us not allow people that were born and bred in our countries, in our African countries, and that we entrusted with leadership positions, be the ones that are getting used to do things that are very much likely to harm us in the near future.
Exactly. My parting shot is like what I said before. We are not a slave labor camp. Kenya is for Kenyans. We want Kenyan president, Kenyan parliament, Kenyan judiciary, Kenyan police, Kenyan military, Kenyan intelligence service working to develop this great country, defending its independence, developing an independent foreign policy that strengthens each and every Kenyan, making each and every one of us proud to be in this country, and giving each and everyone an opportunity to pursue their talent and happiness to the
Yeah.
fullest
I agree.
for ourselves, and also to see this country replicate itself in future so that it lives in perpetuity, granting opportunities to all our generations. Yeah.
Peace out.
Context channel.